All right, welcome back. And I know what you're probably thinking, how can I be making a prediction video when the tour has already started? And my answer to that is we're only one day into the tour, so better to do it now than any later on. And even with the fact that we're one day in, we still have yet to see certain regions actually start their tours, like Southeast Asia and South America. Of course, Eastern Europe. In this video, I'm not going to be covering Eastern Europe just because of the whole situation. And if we do actually have a tour 2 for Eastern Europe, it might come with some sort of complications where teams might need to have some substitute players or make some roster changes, which will obviously influence my predictions a little bit. And so until we get that info, no predictions for Eastern Europe, so I apologize for that. But and even with the three regions that we have seen already play, we've only seen a few teams, and so I'm going to be trying to not incorporate the results from the first day in this video. I made this list that I'm going to be going off of yesterday before the DPC started. And so I would love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments down below. So, kicking things off with China, I'm of course going to be starting off with my 8th place team all the way up to 1st, and then going and switching regions from there. Starting off with China, I've got in number 8, Team Magma. And I know it kind of seems like some low-hanging fruit to be picking on the team coming in from the lower division, but I think in general, the upper division in every single region is much stronger now than it was in Tour 1. I think in Tour 1, we still had a lot of teams or orgs that were lingering in the upper division after going through some pretty hefty roster changes that just hadn't shaken down to the lower division quite yet. And now that we've gotten past that phase, the upper divisions are much more stacked now. And for Magma, I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep up with an upper division as stacked as China's is. At least the top 6 teams in China seem very well defined, and I have a hard time seeing them breaking into that. And I have that for my next team as well, in my number 17, LBZS. And that kind of hurts for me to put them there. I was a pretty big fan of them in the last tour. I was pretty happy with the result, finishing 6th place in the region, picking up 3 wins. I thought was pretty fantastic. But again, with how much stronger this division looks now, I don't know if LBZS is going to be able to keep up with the other teams in this region, like Vici Gaming, like eHome, and like another team coming in for the lower division, who I think are getting a lot better with time. Again, I'm hopeful, but I'm a little skeptical with the result. I think I had them at 7th in the last tour as well, and they surprised me, so we'll see. But I think they surprised me, but also I think Invictus Gaming surprised me more than anything, and it ended up saving LBZS's ass. Coming in at number 6, and honestly, I am still a little skeptical about this team. I've got Vici Gaming. Vici Gaming has had a lot of moments where they have looked quite good. They've taken some games off of some pretty good teams, but they just haven't really been able to win an entire series yet with this roster that they have put together after TI10. Of course, they lost pretty much everyone other than Poyoyo, and I haven't really seen this roster come together fully yet, and I'm hoping that this happens in this upcoming tour, or at least sooner rather than later, because I do think they are still a pretty talented stack, but this is a very, very difficult division. So again, I'm hopeful, but with how tough these top few teams are, and moving up from 5th place onwards, all of these teams I think are very fantastic. And again, it's going to be very tough for Vici Gaming to keep up with them. At number 5, I have eHome. And again, it kind of sucks to put eHome down here because I do think they're a very, very talented team. They're one of the only teams that actually put up a hell of a fight against PSG.LGD whenever they played them. But I'm just skeptical with them being able to keep up with everyone else in this division. They've only been together for a pretty short time, even though they are a team that was together in the lower division last year. Again, I can't really say much else other than the fact that I think the top teams in this division are just going to be incredibly hard to break into. I do think they're better than a lot of the other teams in this division, hence why I have them in 5th. But I think they're going to have to fight really, really hard if they wanted to make it to the major. Again, China has 4 slots. I have them placed in 5th right now, but we'll see how it goes from here. At number 4, and this one is also maybe a little controversial because I think that they're also a fantastic team. I'm going to sound like a broken record probably throughout this entire video because this entire upper division and every region is fantastic. But at number 4, I have Aster. Nothing really wrong with Aster. I think they started to slip in their performance later on in the first tour, and it really showed that RNG was more reliably able to take them down over and over, and it became a real problem for Aster, where no matter how well they were able to do against the weaker teams in this division, they still really had a hard time taking down teams like RNG and like PSG.LGD. And so I'm hoping that they can still finish in the top 4 so they can at least get some spots at a major. but I'm a little skeptical about their performance, especially at the end of the first tour. It just seemed to slowly and slowly decay in comparison with some other teams where their performance got much more cohesive and a lot more strategical and a lot more dominant. At number 3, and this might seem a little ambitious, but I think it's warranted. I have Extreme. Of course, they are a team coming in through the lower division. However, looking at their team on paper, you would have never guessed that this was a team coming in from the lower division because they have such a superstar roster. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean instantaneous success, and we saw that with some teams in the past division. Team Secret, for example, after they put that fantastic roster together, they kind of struggled a little bit. Talon in Southeast Asia's lower division is one that comes to mind immediately as one that had so much hype behind it, and it fizzled out very, very quickly. And so I'm hoping that doesn't happen again for Extreme. They did have a few setbacks in the lower division, but since then they have brought in even more big name players like Lou and like Old 11 who had very impressive showings in their past. And so I think Extreme, I think it's fair to say, should be attending the first major. And again, that might be a little ambitious to say, but I've got high hopes for this team, and I'm very, very, very excited to see them play against some of the other teams in this division. At my number 2 spot, we're down to just 2 teams now, and I'm sure you guys could put 2 and 2 together on who number 1 is, but before that, I'm going to be going with RNG. RNG has really come together quite well. I really think number 2 is up for grabs for all 3 of these teams, Aster, Extreme, and RNG, just based on who plays this tour the best, obviously, but I think RNG's consistency has really gotten better as the tour went on. I talked about how with Aster, they started very strong and started to maybe decay a little bit over the tour. RNG started off pretty weak. They looked inconsistent. It looked like every single game was a 50-50, whether or not God King was going to be able to pull through or not. And as time went on, the whole team just started to gel together so much better. God King was playing better, more reliably. And at the end of the day, I think this team is playing fantastic. I'd be very surprised if they don't finish anywhere in the top 3 or if they don't make it to the major. But for now, I've got them at number 2, which leads me to my number 1 spot. I know it's anticlimactic. Everyone's going to put them there, but I have PSG.LGD. And you know, it's anticlimactic, but they've given me no reason to doubt them. For the past, year and a half, they have not given me any reason to doubt them. Actually, that's not true. In the first tour of the last season, they finished, 4th place in the region or something. But, they have had such a steady climb to the first place position in China and have been very, very dominant ever since they got it. I see no reason not to have PSG.LGD at my number 1 spot. So, yeah, that is it for my China predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now, moving on to Southeast Asia. And these predictions, they don't get easier from here because it's very easy to get something very slightly wrong. And I'm probably going to do a video later on in the tour where I compare the actual standings to my predictions. And there's bound to be some things that are wrong. But I think this upper division in Southeast Asia is another one that has gotten much, much stronger into this second tour. Kicking off with my number 8 team. This really could go either way. These are 2 teams. I will say my 2 bottom teams are the 2 teams that I had predicted to be at the bottom of the last tour, and then they just barely avoided relegation. The first one, coming in at 8th place, in my opinion, I have OB.Neon. OB.Neon was having a lot of success outside of the DPC. When I put them at number 7, I think, in my last prediction video, everyone was like, oh no, OB.Neon's playing very well outside the DPC. They're going to have a great tour, and it kind of fizzled out. To their credit, they did avoid relegation. They won the matches that they needed to win, but their roster fell apart from there. They brought in a bunch of new players, but I don't really have a whole lot of faith in this roster. And this is the exact same thing I said last time in my last prediction video for Tour 1. They proved me wrong. I would love to see them prove me wrong again. So, but yeah, as of right now, I've got them at number 8. And at number 7, the other team that I also had in the bottom 2 of my last prediction video, I have Execration. And Execration, I think, is a much stronger team than what would appear if you see them at 7th place. I'm not saying that Execration is necessarily a bad team. I do think that they had a pretty decent tour. They won some pretty crucial matches, but they also weren't really as competitive with some of the best teams in the region. Since then, they have also gone through their fair share of roster changes. However, they managed to bring in some pretty big name players like Tino, Paulos. Tino previously on Boom, of course. Now he's going to be doing a position change. I believe he's going to be playing off lane in this new tour. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, but looking at the other names of the other teams in this division, I am a little skeptical about these roster changes, and so we'll see how it ends up going. Again, just like OB.Neon, they proved me wrong in the past. I would love to see them prove me wrong again. All right, now speeding through this a little quicker because it's taking me a very long time to get through this list. At number 6 and number 5, I've got the 2 teams coming in through the lower division. I'll group them together because honestly, I think it just comes down to who wins their first matchup against each other, which is going to be very, very soon. We have Nigma Galaxy and Polaris. Again, doesn't really matter which order they're in. I think these two teams are incredibly closely knit to one another, and we saw that in the lower division. I think they're both incredibly talented teams, and I'm very excited to see them play in this upper division. I'm hoping that they don't end up fizzling out and getting knocked down to the lower division once again, because they have really, really fun teams to watch, especially their mid laners. Alacrity and Lelich are incredible players, and I am super excited to see them play against some of the best mid laners in the region, like Moon, like Yopaj, like Carl. So very excited, and of course Armel. All right, moving into my number 4 spot, and keep in mind Southeast Asia only has 3 slots available, and I really wish that there were 4 slots per region, because every single region has a very top heavy division, and it just makes it very difficult to rank these. But number 4, I kind of have to go with SMG. SMG showed a lot of progression in their previous tour, showing that they were able to keep up with the top teams while also being able to reliably beat the lower tier teams. But as time went on, they kind of started to show cracks in their foundation, not able to beat these top tier teams as much as they would need to actually earn any sort of DPC points and build any sort of a lead over top of them. And they have made some roster changes since then by kicking Raj and bringing in Ninja Boogie. We'll see if it ends up being enough to really get them over the edge. But for now, I've got them at number 4, which means by my predictions, not sure they're going to be making it to the next major. And at number 3, and this one might come off a little controversial, I've got T1. T1 did make some roster changes. They bring in Gabby after kicking out 23 Savage, and even though 23 Savage may have been a bit of a detriment to the team chemistry and the way that their team functioned, I think he was a super valuable asset, and for the games that he was playing with T1, I watched pretty much every single one of them. He was a crucial part of almost every single one of them. Like, his plays were fantastic, and so I'm hoping this kicking doesn't end up being too detrimental. I thought Gabby's performance in the regional finals were fantastic, and that was with him just being on the team for roughly like a week and a half or something leading up to that. So that means that they should be getting better from here, but we'll see how they end up doing. I think that these top 2 teams are pretty damn incredible. My number 2 spot, it's got to go to Fnatic. Again, Fnatic has done nothing but improve since the start of the first tour. They started off pretty weak, and since then they have just been an absolute tear. They did hit a bit of a speed bump there in the regional finals, losing to T1. But I do think that they are bound to the major, and if they don't make it to the major, I will be very, very surprised. I think all of the members on the team are playing fantastic. I'm glad that Hanuel ended up getting picked up by a team right before the start of the first tour, and that he's having so much success now. I think that Fnatic is going quite far, which means my number 1 team in this division is gotta be Boom. Now that they've brought in Jackie and kicked Tino, which really felt like the only weak point in their roster, there's really no point of this team that there's not really nothing at this team that I could like point at and say that that's their weak point right now. And maybe it'll take some time to figure that out. Of course, having a new member on your team means that teams are going to have to figure out how to draft against you and how to play against you. And to the other teams in the division's credit, we haven't really seen just how strong Jackie has been with the team. He hasn't really had a game that was necessarily on his back. Yopaj and FBZ and the rest of the team have really been pulling their weight throughout. So I'm excited to see how that goes. But as of right now, again, Boom just looks so dominant, and again, if they don't make it to the major, at least finishing top 2 in the division, I think that would be a pretty big disappointment for the team. So yeah, we'll see how that ends up going. All right, now skipping Eastern Europe, of course, because of the postponement. We're going to be moving on now to Western Europe. We've already had some matches for Western Europe, but again, I made this list before those matches took place, so I'm going to be going ahead with that anyways. Kicking off, my number 1 team in this division. Oh, wait, I almost started from the wrong order. I'm going to be starting it from the bottom. All right, number 8 in the division, I have Brame. Again, kind of easy, kind of some low-hanging fruit to be putting the team coming in from the lower division at number 8, but it's really been a pattern that we've been seeing a lot with Western Europe, where 2 teams come in from the lower division, one of them struggles, one of them goes 0-7, and then the other one does pretty all right. They cement themselves as one of the more decent teams in the division. We saw that with, well, first of all, Tundra. Now we have Game and Gladiators who have come in, and rather than just be kind of a mediocre team, both of those teams have been pretty dominant. But Brame, I think, is on the other half of that, where they're going to be the team that really struggles to do anything. Not to say that they didn't earn their spot in the upper division, they definitely did, but this is not the same stack of players that made it here, and I'm a little bit concerned with some of the players that they did pick up to fill those roster slots, and I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that, you know, this is a team that was bound for the upper division and their roster fell apart, and it's not like those players got poached by other big tier 1 teams. They just left the team, which kind of leads me to believe that there's maybe something wrong with the foundation of the team. Maybe it was one of the players that left. But either way, I'm a little skeptical about Brame, and that's why I have them at number 8. At number 7 now, and again, I'm going to be sticking with the lower division teams here. I'm going to be going with Entity, and this is not where I hope they end up finishing. Again, I've been really loving these teams coming in from the lower division and showing these upper division teams whose boss, again, Tundra and Gladiators have been fantastic. I'm hoping Entity can be one of those teams, but this upper division in Western Europe is looking tighter than ever. The only weak point I can really point out in the division is going to be the next team on this list that I'm going to be talking about, and that's Nigma Galaxy. And it really hurts to put them here. It really hurts to put players like Miracle, GH, Kuroki, Mind Control, hell, even ILTW. I know people shit on ILTW all the time, but he still is a fantastic player. We have really not seen enough consistency from Nigma Galaxy to really justify me putting them any higher. It feels like every single time we start putting faith in them, they kind of let us down a little bit. And I know that they don't play with a 100% seriousness. They don't play, 100% competitively all the time. That's not to say that I don't think that they're trying to win all the time, but again, their lack of consistency has really been alarming. They had a nice comeback in the back half of the first tour, then they had a terrible day of tiebreakers, and it kind of just feels like whenever their backs are not up against the wall, you can't really count on them to win a series, and so I'm a little bit concerned with them. I have them at number 6, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think I would be surprised if they end up getting relegated based on the way that they've been playing. All right. Moving on now. Moving on to my number 5 spot. And this is tough because I've got my number 5 and my number 4 team kind of closely together, and I didn't know who I was going to put ahead. And so if in the future they end up being right next to each other, I'll be happy with that. But at number 5, I have to go with OG. And it kind of hurts to put them here because OG, again, have really not given me anything too much to complain about. Their roster has been fantastic, how quickly they've been able to come together. But again, this upper division in Western Europe is looking better than ever before. And with the changes that the team ahead of them, the team that I have kind of closely knit with them has made, I think it might be enough for them to actually overcome their difficulties and actually make it to the first major, or first major of the year, the second major that it should have been. And that is my number 4 team, Tundra. Kicking Fada, bringing in Soxa, on the surface feels kind of weird, but from what we saw at the Dubai Invitationals, they came together very, very quickly, and it showed that even though Fada was the captain of this team is still able to play very, very well without him, and Soxa has definitely been a big part of that. I'm hoping that this change does end up being the one that helps Tundra get over the hump that they have yet to been able to get over when it comes to beating some of the best teams and overcoming them in the DPC, but we'll see how it goes from here. I think they should make the first major. If they don't, I think it'll be seen as a huge disappointment. All right, moving on now to my number 3 team. I have Team Liquid. And again, Team Liquid had a very fantastic showing, finishing first place in the regional aspect of the first tour. They finished second place in the regional finals. And I'm not necessarily putting them down to third place because I think that they're a bad team. I still think they are a fantastic team, but I do think that there are 2 teams right now that are looking a lot better. And this might be a little biased, one of these teams, based on the results from today. I'm not trying to include that as biased, but now that there has been a change inside one of these teams, I think it makes them a lot stronger. And that is my number 2 team, Team Secret. And honestly, Team Secret could be in contention for first place right now. I think moving Nisha back to the mid lane, moving Sumail back to the carry position, even though it does feel a little odd having Sumail in the carry position, I think he has definitely earned his right to be called a carry player full time now, especially with his performances in TI-10. And Nisha, again, I don't want to lean too heavily on the series that we already seen between Team Secret and Team Liquid, but Nisha looks so fantastic on the mid lane. I'm really glad that he's back on the mid lane, and I think with this position change, it kind of took out that awkwardness that Team Secret had in their team, in their dynamic, in their drafts, and I'm hoping that this kind of brings out a little bit more comfort in their gameplay like we saw earlier today, and that's why I think Team Secret should be one of the top teams of this region once again. And that leads me now to my number 1 spot. I've got Gaming Gladiators. And Sure, maybe they might not finish first place in the region. Maybe it's possible that they finish second or even third place if Team Liquid and Team Secret have fantastic tours. But these guys definitely cemented themselves as one of the top teams in the region, winning those regional finals on an incredibly impressive run through the lower division after getting knocked down by Team Liquid in the first round of those regional finals. These guys showed that they have everything that you need in a winning team. You've got a captain who's able to really give you guys a solid game plan, a solid draft. You've got the star mid laner. You've got the carry player who's able to take the game on his back whenever you need it. And you've got a dynamic off laner that's able to just crush lanes and play these weird builds and just really fit the puzzle piece of whatever your team needs for that game. And I'm really looking forward to them. I'm really glad that they didn't fall off after the first tour. Because if they hadn't had the opportunity to maybe make it to a major, it would have been pretty upsetting. Obviously, they still haven't made a major, but based on how they've been playing, I'd be very surprised if they missed out. But again, a lot of very impressive teams in this division. Entirely possible that they do, and it's entirely possible that I end up being wrong, which is something that I think I forgot to preface at the start of the video, is people tend to get pretty mad if I make a prediction that they don't agree with. This is all my personal opinion. I am not expecting to be 100% right. I made a prediction video for Tour 1 where I wasn't right. So, well, I was right for a few things, but not everything. But anyways, that's my Western Europe predictions. Now moving on to North America. All right, starting off at the bottom, I have the Cut. Yeah, they're my number 8 team. They've been in this position before, coming in through the lower division into the upper division, and they went 0-7 last time. And again, I'm hopeful that they don't end up repeating that. I'm hoping that they have a better time in the upper division this time around, but they are coming into this division after going through substantial roster changes, bringing in some pretty solid players. But again, upper divisions, even in North America and South America right now, are looking a lot better than they did in the previous tour. So I'm a little skeptical about this. Again, I'm hopeful for them, but I don't know how far they're going to be able to do. If anyone could do it, it's Scourge McDuck. He had a fantastic Tour 1 in the lower division, but we'll see. At my number 7 spot, I have Simply 2Based. Again, it kind of feels weird. They just barely escaped relegation in the first tour by getting a nice couple wins at the end of the tour, but with other teams in the division like Black and Yellow and like Arkosh, who are just as unreliable as them, unless Simply 2Based is able to really quickly turn things around, I don't see how they can manage to stay in the upper division. Again, maybe they might narrowly escape it by finishing 6th place again, but I'm not really placing my bets on it. Following that, at number 6, we have DogChamp. And sure, it might seem a little ambitious. Again, Simply 2Based kind of has that upper division experience that DogChamp really hasn't had before, but DogChamp has held onto the roster entirely. They are coming into the upper division with a lot of momentum, only losing that one series to the Cut. And with the amount of teams that are kind of on the weaker side near the very bottom of the division, I think it's very likely that DogChamp, if they get off to a strong enough start, can edge themselves into that number 6 spot and really cement themselves as a upper division team. They might not be one of the top contender teams in the upper division, but they'll be an upper division team nonetheless. I've been pretty impressed with their play so far. I think there's no real weak spot that you can point at when it comes to individual players on their team, and we'll see how this ends up going. Again, they just have to beat 2 other teams to avoid relegation. We'll see how that ends up going. And from here, the list kind of follows the trajectory of the previous tour, just because I think that every team in this division going forward has kind of cemented themselves in certain positions. At my number 5 spot, I have Wildcard. And again, Wildcard is a pretty fantastic team. They've shown that they can take down teams like Evil Geniuses when they are having a bad day. They can take down teams that, like teams below them that are a little on the weaker side, but they can do it very reliably. But they've yet to show me that they're able to actually crack into the upper half of this division. They had 2 opportunities to take down 4 Zoomers in the previous tour, and they didn't take a single game off of them. So that's why I'm a little skeptical, and based on history in the past as well, that's why I have my number 4 team here, 4 Zoomers. Again, they're the best team in this division that isn't one of the top 3. They can consistently beat all the teams below them, but they cannot, for the life of them, beat the teams above them. And that's kind of the weird middle zone that they've been in for a very long time now. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Last tour was their strongest performance. I thought they had their best games against the best teams in this division in that tour. We'll see if they're able to improve on that, but given how well these top 3 teams have been playing, I'm a little skeptical about it. All right, now moving on to my number 3 team. And again, the top 3 teams in this division are incredibly close. I can see this going either way. The fact that one of these teams is guaranteed to miss a major is pretty heartbreaking because, again, they're all fantastic teams, but I'm going with Quincy Crew for my number 3 spot. Again, I can't really directly point at anything because they did have a fantastic tour. They did falter a little bit in some portions of that tour where they would fall behind early and they just really didn't know how to come back from a game like that. And I don't want to lean too much on the game that I saw today. I did watch their series today against Wildcard, and that wasn't the cleanest Dota. Game 2 specifically wasn't the cleanest, but I don't want to hold that too much to them. I'm just worried that teams above them right now are just going into this tour with way too much momentum, and Quincy Crew might be the one that slides down the rankings a little bit in this tour. That leads me to my number 2 team, Evil Geniuses. And again, I think Evil Geniuses are coming into this with a lot of momentum. They're coming straight off of a second place finish in the regional finals after having a terrible start to the first tour. They have done nothing but improve since then. And sure, it may have been off of the back of MSS standing in for Nightfall for a little bit there. But Nightfall did come back for those regional finals, and he looked fantastic in them. He was playing with so much more confidence. His hero pool looked way more comfortable on him, and he was making all the right plays at all the right times. And I think EG is starting to finally hit their stride a little bit. And when players like Crit, Jirax, Abed, Arteezy are all hitting their stride, when Nightfall is starting to really get comfortable in his hero pool too, that is not a team that I want to be playing against in a major. So for everyone else in all these other divisions, you better hope that Evil Geniuses does not end up finishing in the top 2 in this upcoming tour. Which leads me to my number 1 spot, and how could I really go with anything else than TSM? And you may be noticing that I'm pretty much gone with every single winner from the regional finals for my number 1 spot. It's the safest bet. I know it's a little bit safe, but, you know, cut me some slack here. It's predictions. I want to be right, you know? But TSM, again, they have done nothing but improve throughout the past year. I have been consistently impressed with their performances, all the way dating back to TI-10. And the fact that they just barely missed out on both majors last year by finishing 3rd place, losing tiebreakers to teams like EG and Quincy Crew, now that they're finally a team that has shown that they can reliably beat them, or at least they can reliably beat EG, which might end up being all that they need to make it to a major, I think that they should be making it there. And again, I'm excited to see how this tour goes for them. Again, all of the players on the team playing fantastic. And despite the fact that they have no coach, pretty much no team in this division has a coach. If you watch my preview, that's something I touched on. They've been playing very, very clean Dota. And they've shown that they can play from behind, like some other teams have struggled a little bit in this division, like Quincy Crew again. But yeah, those are my North America predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Okay, now moving on to last but not least, we have South America. Again, you guys are always having to wait for the end of the video. Apologies for that, but we're going to be kicking things off with my number 8 team. I'm going to go with Hikori for this one, and I'm a little skeptical with Hikori because they didn't have the best tour in the previous tour. They had a pretty rough time. They did narrowly escape relegation, but again, I think this upper division now is a lot stronger than it was in the previous tour, and I think Hikori is one of those teams that isn't really up to par with the skill level in this upper division still. They made some roster changes. They brought in some players like Analog and Theo Licor, but those players are coming in from No Ping, who had a pretty terrible tour as well. So I don't know how this is going to go. Maybe they finish 7th or 6th place. I don't see them getting any higher than that. But for now, I've got them at number 8. And at number 7, I've got a lower division team. I've got Balrogs. Again, this division looks very competitive, and after being quite impressed with Balrogs' performance in the lower division, I don't believe they made any roster changes coming into this tour. I'm just a little skeptical that they might not be able to keep up with some of these teams. However, if there is one team that they can keep up with in this division that is staying in this division from the last tour as well, that I think is on the same page as Hikori, maybe just a little bit stronger, it's Lava, and that's my number 6 team. Lava had a pretty underwhelming tour with the members on the team. I think it's safe to say that. We'll see if they're able to improve from here. I do have them above the cutoff line for the end of the tour, but I don't have the most faith in the roster. Again, I don't see them making it past the top 4 in this division whatsoever. And if they did, it would be a really pleasant surprise. But again, they're one of the low-hanging fruit for me in this division, and that's why I have them at number 6. And at number 5, I have, and this is tough because at my number 5 and my number 4, I think both of these teams could be interchangeable. in my personal opinion, I could be completely wrong. They could end up being like a total stomp when they play against one another. But for my number 5 spot, am going to be putting APU King of Kings. Not to throw any shade at APU King of Kings. I think they're a very fantastic team, but they have yet to be able to show that they're on par with some of the other top teams in this division, and I'm worried that they're going to get caught up to by some other teams in this division. We'll see if they're able to improve upon that in this upcoming tour, but for now I have them at number 5. However, again, it could be easily interchangeable with my number 4 team here, Infinity. Infinity is a team coming into the lower division. They looked impressive as all hell in the lower division. However, they have gone through some roster changes, which does leave me with a little bit of doubt, which is why I'm not as certain about having them in number 4 spot, which is why, you know, I could swap out APU King Kings and Infinity for either position there. They lose Parker, for example. They bring in players like Rises from Black and Yellow, who didn't exactly have the best tour in North America in Tour 1, but we'll see how it ends up going for them. I have a lot of respect for this team. Again, they had a super, super impressive run in the lower division, and we'll see how they're able to do in this upper division. Who knows? Maybe they end up being one of the new top teams in the division. Finishing top 2 seems a little unlikely. Making it to the major seems a little unlikely, but I think that they can make it into the top half. And that brings me to my number 3 spot, and that is going to be Infamous. Infamous, what a fantastic first tour. They surprised everyone by finishing 2nd place in the region, meaning that if there was a major, they would have made it, which would have been incredible for them. Unfortunately for them, they didn't make it. They do make it to the grand finals and the regional finals, however, where they ran into an unstoppable Beast Coast, which was pretty unfortunate, but it was a very impressive run. They took down teams like Thunder Awaken in the lower bracket of that tournament, which I don't think anyone saw coming, and it was a pretty hefty win too. It was a pretty convincing win, which is something that we haven't really seen over Thunder Awaken pretty much throughout this entire year. So I'm hoping that they can keep up with that. They did go through some roster changes, losing players like Sacred, like Michael, but they do bring in players like Slade and Oscar, who have also been having a reasonable amount of success in the past. And so I'm hoping that those changes don't end up being too detrimental, and they end up actually hopefully propping them up even further. I have a lot of high hopes for these guys. I hope that they do very well, but for now, I've got them at number 3, which means not necessarily expecting them to make it to the major, but if they did, be a pleasant surprise. At number 2, I've got Thunder Awaken, and again, Thunder Awaken, what a dominant performance in Tour 1. They were one of the top teams in my power rankings for such a long time because of how dominantly they were playing. And then they kind of flamed out a little bit in those regional finals, which led to some roster changings. They kicked Oscar. I'm hoping that, again, that doesn't end up being too detrimental, because this team, I think, was one of the best teams in this region and was getting those results that they were getting because they were one of the best teams here. And sometimes they were just beating teams with like a clearly worse draft, but they would just like beat them in with it was like beating them with a club, essentially. They were just so much better that they could win with like any draft, which is definitely the weak point with this team. And I've seen a lot of this team's losses come from just drafting errors and better teams just being able to capitalize on that, which is why I'm a little bit worried about when they do make it to a major, if they play against some better teams from other regions. But as of right now, for South America, I still think these guys are one of the top dogs of the region, and so I've got them making it to the major. They should make it there, but we'll see if those roster changes end up being a bit too much detrimental, which means my number 1 spot, I have Beast Coast. I'm not very confident with having them at number 1. Not to say that they're not a good team, but they are a very hot and cold team, and that's exactly what we saw in the first tour. They started off incredibly hot, 4-0, and they kind of hit a brick wall when they ran into some of the other teams in the division, like Infamous and like Thunder Awaken, who were playing very well. But then that kind of snowballed out of control, and it caused them to lose a series against SG Esports, who was completely winless to this point. And again, it just kind of goes to show how much Beast Coast is a feast or famine team. So I have them as number 1 right now. I think when they are playing their best, they are the best team in the region. But I would not be surprised if they slip down the rankings a little bit, if they go through that same kind of cold spell that they went through in the first tour. Luckily, they were able to bounce back with that through those regional finals. Hector did come back to the roster after a few weeks off, and he looked very, very good. but we'll see if they're able to replicate that in this next tour. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, apologies for not including Eastern Europe in this video. Hopefully we can have that tour coming soon and safely. And until then, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Got my South America preview going up tomorrow. I know I said that yesterday, but tomorrow it's going to actually be going up. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.